Welcome to Relate Higher, a podcast dedicated to providing the leading standard in conscious higher relating and to teaching you a conscious framework for all of your relationships. This is your go-to resource for developing meaningful, conscious relationships across your life. I'm your host, award-winning relationship coach and consultant and former family lawyer, Letitia Ringe. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your coach, Letitia Ringe, and today we are talking about relationship transformation. There are 4 stages to the transformation process that we all move through, and it's really important that you understand what these 4 phases look like so that you are effective in your transformation and also so that you stay committed to the process, because that is ultimately what creates the transformation. Now, in the context of relationship transformation, there are added complexities. The fact is you're dealing with other people, which means that the transformation process has less of your control, which means it may take longer. And also you're dealing with patterns, programs, and habits that began when you were a very small child, because that's where you first learned how to relate with other people. So we're also dealing with many, many years of ways of relating and behaving and habits that you have ingrained year upon year. So it's important that you expect your relationship transformations to take time, and you want to stay in the process because it is the process that creates the change that you desire. It's the process that allows you to have the deeply fulfilling, satisfying, successful, and thriving relationships and relationship ecosystem that you desire and that you defined in our previous episodes. So in today's episode, I'm going to walk you through what the 4 stages to the process of transformation are. And I'm also going to ask you some questions that can help you to start to build your awareness and also find out what your challenges might be. When they come up in your relationship transformation, you'll then be able to say, this was expected, this is actually a sign of success, and then continue to move forward. Okay, so what are the 4 phases to the relationship cycle? The first stage is awareness, the second stage is clarity, the third stage is realignment, and the 4th stage is embodiment. In the first stage, awareness, this is a phase that most of us skip. We want to go straight to trying to transform and change. But then we find that we take 2 steps forward and then we find ourselves taking another step or 2 back. And it becomes very, very frustrating, and it's because we've missed this first stage. The first stage, awareness, is about simply becoming aware of where you are right now. Now, the goal in this stage is then to get to a place of either neutrality or, even better, acceptance with where you are now. Now, this sounds counterintuitive because for some of us, we think if I accept where I am right now, then won't this stop me from wanting to move forward and change and grow and evolve? The answer is, well, it might, but the better answer is, you're fighting where you are right now is the very thing that creates this stop-start. Because the reason that happens is that there is an incongruence within your mind right now. Part of you is actually committed to where you are. That's why you're there. There's a level of comfort as well as other unconscious reasons that you're where you are right now, that you're committed to where you are. And at the same time, there's a part of you that is judging where you are right now. So this incongruence creates this stop-start energy. I want to move forward because there's something wrong with where I am, but I want to move back because there's a reason that I'm committed to where I am. And so this lack of awareness with what you're actually committed to and why you're committed to that thing is what stops you from actually moving forward. So we are expanding your awareness in this first stage of the transformation cycle so that you can come to a place of neutrality and acceptance with where you are. So the first question to answer is, where am I in relation to my relationships right now? Now, as you answer this question, you want to answer with facts only, not opinions. So the facts might look like I'm in a romantic partnership, or I'm married, or I'm single in my romantic relationship area of my life. Another fact looks like I have 5 friends. I have 10 professional colleagues. I manage X amount of people. I have a relationship with my mother, my 3 children, and my 2 sisters. Opinions might look like I have a good relationship with my partner. I have a bad relationship with my sister. It could look like I don't feel like this relationship is successful and this relationship is. These are not helpful. They're not facts that everyone would agree with. So we want to answer the question, where am I right now in relation to my relationships, with facts only. Now, as you write down the facts, just notice how your mind wants to describe each of these relationships or relationship areas. That is where you know there is some of this incongruence, this resistance. Equally, notice how you feel as you answer the question. Perhaps you notice that there is some judgment about where you are right now. This is really great information, and we don't need to change anything about what you're experiencing here. We just want to expand your awareness so that you're noticing, okay, these are the facts, and then this is the judgment that's going on within me right now. This is the reason I'm not allowing myself to transform, this very judgment. And the part of you that doesn't want to accept that this is where I am right now is also part of the reason that you're not transforming. We don't need to solve it, we just need to notice it. And the reason is, the more that we simply allow ourselves to be where we are right now, we allow the facts as well as the judgment, as well as the commitment to where we are, that is what ultimately leads you to feeling more neutral about it all. And that's ultimately what leads you to actually accepting where you are. Now, there's a little bit more involved in accepting, and if we were working together as a coach and a client, I'd be taking you through some specific questions and a process to get you to a place of acceptance. We can't possibly do that here on the podcast, but what I can tell you is that simply by expanding your awareness to answer that question, it will start moving you towards neutrality and towards and closer to acceptance. So that's the goal of this first stage. Answer the question, where am I right now? And the goal is we're moving from a place of not even being aware of where we are and this incongruence and battle happening within us to being aware of the judgments that's there as well as to where we actually are. This moves us to neutrality and towards acceptance. The second stage of the transformation process is clarity. Now, when we skip the first stage and we try to move straight to clarity, what tends to happen is we are trying to get clear on where it is we want to go from a place that is not actually aligned. We're actually rejecting and judgmental of where we are right now. And so we want to create this vision from a place of trying to escape. So it's really coming from a place of lack. The other problem that comes up in this stage is that we're trying to figure it out. We're really immediately trying to figure it out, but clarity is something that arrives. It's not something we think our way to. But when we're trying to escape where we are, it creates this feeling of urgency, of desperation, of scarcity, of lack. And it means that we try to think about it even harder and to arrive at clarity, which makes it even harder for clarity to actually arrive. Because do you know what clarity actually needs? It needs space. So we create space through not fighting where we are anymore, which is why phase 1 is so important. And we also create space through letting clarity arrive, through not trying to force it, because we're all in our mind, we're thinking, how can clarity arrive? There's no space for it to drop in and arrive, for us to receive the clarity. It's not something we're trying to get to and actioning our way to. It's something we create space for and we receive and it drops in. Now, Another challenge that comes up in this stage is that we then get the clarity of what we want our relationship life to look like, what our needs and desires are, and then we judge them. We say, well, this isn't a good enough vision, or is this it? Or how am I even going to create this? And we filter the information we've received, the clarity we've received through this filter of what we think is possible, of whether we can see a pathway for how we create it, of also what we see around us, of what other people have created. And in the context of creating conscious relationships and moving into a higher, more conscious standard of relating, we're going to have even fewer examples of what this looks like around us, because for the most part, we're all creating this standard and this way of being in relationships without having examples around us. We're the relationship leaders. We're creating new standards for everybody else to start seeing and being able to live up to. And this is really important because, as you will have noticed, many of the examples around us of what successful relationships actually are, the people in those relationships are still feeling a deep sense of loneliness and unfulfillment. This shows us that the standard needs to get higher, and that's what we're creating here. So, in this phase of the relationship cycle, it can be typical that you judge your clarity, that you don't allow the space for the clarity to come, and that you also tell yourself that it's not possible because you need to know what the pathway to creating that particular vision looks like. But the truth is that you will only know how to create this vision once you've done it. And the other thing to know here is that when you start filtering it through trying to get clear on how you create it, you start to limit the vision because you're trying to figure out, okay, well, it's not actually possible to have this and this. So, okay, I'm just going to take this piece because I think we could create it, because my mind is mentally jumping ahead and trying to figure out the how. But there is a situation beyond your mind's knowing right now where you could actually have this and this without doing this particular thing or without taking this particular piece out of the equation. So as best as possible, you want to accept and allow the clarity that you have, not needing any more or less than what you receive. And you also want to accept and allow a pathway to reveal itself that you don't need to know right now. That's a very uncomfortable place to be, but the more that you allow yourself to just rest into that, the more you allow yourself to move into the next phase of the relationship cycle, transformation cycle, which is realignment. Now, in the realignment phase, the challenge is that you're now confronted with your relationship programs, habits, and patterns. And you're now becoming increasingly aware of those patterns and that they are not in alignment with where you want to go. And so you're actually learning and expanding your awareness here to become aware of other possibilities, other options that will move you towards where you want to go. The difficulty here is it's the messy middle. It's like you know what you want, you know that the way that you're used to relating is not going to get you to what you want, and you're starting to become aware of, well, here are some other ways of relating that are probably going to lead me in the direction of what I want. So you start trying to take those actions and learn new skills, but it's all a bit messy and it's difficult and challenging because you're used to acting in this way and now you need to act in this other way. And on top of that, you don't have the evidence yet that this is actually taking you to where you want to go. This is the hardest part of the process, and it's where we need the most hand-holding to simply stay in the game. And at this stage, you also are faced with your unrealistic expectations of transformation. We expect transformation to be instantaneous, to be simple, no messiness. You don't allow yourself to make mistakes, and all of this is required in this process of realignment because it's about learning. It's like when a child's learning to walk, they're going to fall down and get up. When you're in a business, if you're not having failures, then you're also not having successes. You have to allow yourself to be messy, to fall down and get up, to fail, and then learn it. When you're learning a new physical skill, there's going to be many times before you actually get the skill where you just aren't getting it. And so you keep seeing failure after failure. I'm just not getting it. And unless you continue to keep moving forward, you won't experience the success. Now, in the fourth stage of the transformation process, this is embodiment. This is where we start to actually live from the change. This is where we start to be in these new ways of relating, these higher ways of relating, and we're starting to see the evidence that it's working, and we're really living from it. But you know what else is also happening here is that you are changing. Your perspective is changing. What you see as possible is changing. And we all have a fear of change. Our expansion is actually something we're afraid of because it means that on some levels, our environment, our relationships, our experiences, what we're used to is changing, and that's uncomfortable. So the questions for each phase to ask yourself about here are, the first one we already spoke about, which is, where am I right now in relation to my relationships? And then answering that from a place of fact only. The second question is, where do I want to be in relation to my relationships? And just allowing whatever clarity you have already to come through, nothing less and nothing more. The third question you want to ask yourself are, what are my unrealistic expectations of transformation? And you can even take out the unrealistic part and just ask yourself, what are my expectations of the transformation process? And this is where you really just want to become aware of, like, am I expecting it to be quick? Do I have a time frame around how long it should take? Do I have an expectation of how messy or not messy it should be? What are my expectations? And this will show you that, okay, these are where you're limiting yourself. We need to expand here. We need to allow ourselves to be messy, for it to take longer than we expect, and we need to challenge all of these expectations. And then fourthly, we want to be asking ourselves, what am I afraid will change in this process? This is so interesting because it's also revealing what our unconscious commitments are, why we are so committed to staying where we are right now, which is what we spoke about in phase one. There's a part of us that's actually committed to where we are right now, which is why we are where we are. So the more that we can be aware that actually there's a part of us that is afraid of changing and expanding, then as this comes up throughout the process, and particularly once we start to experience the change, we can allow that to be there while also continuing to move forward and learn the skills and practice the skills and embody the skills, which is what ultimately will create the transformation itself. So that's the 4 stages of the transformation process, and we work through these 4 stages no matter what transformation it is we're creating in our life, including our relationship transformations. Now, on top of this, you need to understand that relationship transformation, as well as all transformation in life, needs to be approached holistically. And so I approach all of my coaching holistically. I have a holistic understanding of transformation. And the reason is, it's the only way to create successful, lasting transformation. Now, what do I mean by holistic? What I mean is you have 3 different systems within you. Each have their own different language, which means each requires nurturing in different ways through the transformation process. Those 3 systems are your mind, your body, and your soul. Now, some people might use the word intuition or inner voice or even heart interchangeably in this last area. These 3 systems, your body, your mind, and your soul, each have a different way of communicating with you, and they need to be nurtured in different ways through the transformation process. So your mind is, we're dealing with the mental part of you. So we're going to be looking at your thoughts and your beliefs and how we change those consciously and unconsciously. then your body is going to be responding to transformation in a different way. You need to understand your nervous system. You need to understand how the body processes change and its stress responses. You need to understand how to work with the body in a somatic way. And then your soul, you need to understand how your intuition, your inner voice, your heart is communicating with you, how it reveals its intelligence and wisdom. And we all have our own intuitive library for the way our soul communicates with us. And so we need to get better at understanding what that looks like and what it means, and also its relationship to our emotions and our feelings. And we need to be nurturing this communication throughout the process of transformation. So all transformation needs to be approached holistically, and that means expanding your self-awareness as to how these three systems work for you. Now, on top of all of this, when it comes to transformation, we then have the relationship transformation complexities. So the first is that you are dealing with other people, which means that you might be transforming and educating yourself and embodying new ways of relating that are more conscious and higher, but you're also dealing with other people who aren't matching you on that level, or who are focused on their own different aspects of transformation, or at their own different level of consciousness, have their own priorities. And so that just adds another layer of complexity. And the only thing that you need to be aware of here is that that's okay, but it also might mean that you start seeing the results of your transformation. It might take a little bit longer. It might show up in even more unexpected ways. And that's beautiful, because actually in the context of relationships, what we want is a third place solution that we're not even aware of yet. That is the gift of a relationship. There's your awareness, there's the other person's awareness, and then there's what you create together, another level of awareness that is the result of these two people interacting and their awarenesses combined. So you'll constantly be surprised in relationships, and that's the gift. There's something beyond your awareness that's an even better solution that will be revealed. And so you need to be aware of that as well. Now, in addition, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, there's also the fact that you have been relating in a very specific way since the beginning of your life, most likely when you first learned and started observing and learning about relating. And this often comes from our family, and it's what we're unconsciously repeating throughout the rest of our lives. So it's just important to know that a lot of this is happening within you unconsciously, because that's how programs, patterns, and habits begin. They start off consciously, you're learning, and then you start to get it, and then it goes into your unconscious, so that your brain doesn't need to use its mental power to keep acting in this specific way. This is a problem because you aren't even aware that there are other ways of relating, because it's become so unconscious to you. So in the process of transformation, you're becoming aware of new ways of relating and almost seeing your way of relating for the first time. And that can be really confronting, and also really, really hard to make the changes desired. That's okay. It's the way it should be. It just takes more time. So you've got to be patient for yourself and stay committed to the process. Now, the final piece to know about relationship transformation is that in the context of conscious relationships, which is what we're here for over at Relate Higher, it's the only way to create the relationships that we're all desiring. You need to understand that you're creating in a whole new space. You are part of the space that is being created. Your example, what you're discovering through this process of transformation. So you don't really have lots of examples to look around and grab to show yourself, oh, this is just a normal part of the process, because you're creating something new that's never been created before. And this is the only way to do it. It is a good thing that it hasn't been created before, because that is what is going to allow us to access this leading, higher, more conscious way of relating with one another. So you're going to have to get more comfortable with not having examples, more comfortable with the fact that this feels uncomfortable and is challenging, and I'm not seeing evidence from other people that this is something that I can create, good, because you're going to be the leader. You're going to be the one showing everybody else what is possible. And that's exactly what we're here for at Relate Higher. So, my beautiful friends, this is the overarching relationship cycle for transformation. And it's really important that you understand this whole process and what the challenges are. And just know, as we continue to move through the podcast, you'll be learning more about how to overcome the specific challenges that show up in each part of the process through working through the Relate Higher framework for successful conscious relationships. All right, I'll see you in our next episode where we'll be talking about your intentional relationship ecosystem. Bye. Thank you for listening to Relate Higher, your go-to resource for learning how to consciously approach all of your relationships. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive the Relate Higher community newsletter. This is a weekly newsletter sent to you every Monday, providing further coaching and education to support your relationships. Subscribe at relatehigher.com/community. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to learn and practice conscious higher relating. Because remember, the more people who learn, the better relationships we all enjoy.